So we're finally here at my technically last video for 2014. I get to talk about my 15 best movies of last year. And the reason why I have 15 on this list, not the usual 10, is because I want to include some smaller movies and Filipino films that I think deserve to be mentioned just as much. And if you're looking for movies like Selma or Birdman or The Imitation Game or The Theory of Everything, they're not gonna be here because number one, I didn't see them, number two, because they never premiered here in the Philippines. This list is gonna be comprised only of movies that the Philippines got theatrically, like whether through a festival or through a regular release. And before I continue, I just want to say that like my philosophy when it comes to making a list like this is, not really trying not to compare one movie to the other. And I know that's impossible because it's a list and you'll end up comparing movies, but for me at least, like it's not really a question of which movie is better than the other. For me, it's a question of which movie was the best version of itself that could possibly be compared to the others. So for me, number one on my list will be like the movie that reached its potential the most or went beyond its potential to be more than the sum of its parts. Movie number two may also have done that, but like to a slightly lesser degree. So, it's really just trying to evaluate each movie, on their own. But before I continue, there are a lot of honorable mentions I want to bring up because I just enjoyed a lot of movies last year. You have 22 Jump Street, this hilarious meta sequel, Kasal, which is I think the first LGBT drama from the Philippines that actually gets the LGBT stuff like honestly and genuinely. Rurouni Kenshin Kyoto Inferno, which is an anime adaptation that actually turned out very well. It's very, very exciting stuff. Big Hero 6, which is this really, really charming and super fun to watch animation. Hill of Freedom, which is this South Korean movie that's like an hour long. It's a very, very interesting narrative experiment. That thing called Dadhana, which is like the Filipino version of Before Sunrise, and it's really well done. Edge of Tomorrow, which was a big surprise. Tom Cruise doing his best work in a long time. Aliens and suspense and whatnot. Interstellar, which everyone thinks I hate. I don't hate Interstellar. Despite my problems with it, I still feel like it was a very exhilarating kind of movie that only Christopher Nolan could have made. And just barely missing the last, slot was Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which I think really kind of transcended its superhero roots and really became something else. It became like a real kind of espionage thriller. But at number 15, we have a foreign film. But before you call me out for being pretentious or whatever, don't worry about subtitles or anything in this movie because the primary spoken language in The Raid 2 is kicking ass. This is directed by Gareth Evans and he just gets action right because I think The Raid 2 has some of the best action ever put to film ever. The direction, the choreography is amazing, the editing is amazing, even like the sound and the makeup put into the fights make them feel more realistic and really, really brutal, really, really works. And apart from that, this movie just overall has really great, gorgeous cinematography and manages to tell like this genuinely interesting, classic mob story about loyalty and ambition, and it's really, really great. At number 15 is unfortunately the only Filipino film on this list, but I'm very, very happy that it is Marikina, directed by Melo Sugueco. The production company where this comes from really is starting to leave its mark. Whenever it makes a Filipino movie, you can tell because it always looks great. The production design, the cinematography, the score from Gerald Darroch really kind of give this movie this atmosphere of like melancholy and longing that's really, really unique to it. But for me, the strongest suit of Marikina is the acting from everyone in the cast. Ricky Davao, Bing Pimentel, Mylene Dizon, especially Barbie Forteza, who is really, really young, but just through her sheer skill with acting, she makes you believe that she's the younger version of Mylene Dizon, even if they don't look anything alike. And I think Marikina really resonated with me because it really is just this very pure, non-melodramatic story about forgiveness, forgiving others, forgiving yourself. And then at number 13 is a movie I waited a week to see, and I'm never ever gonna do that ever again if it's a movie as good as X-Men Days of Future Past. This was really Bryan Singer coming back to the X-Men franchise to like reclaim what was originally his. Like his direction is just spot on throughout the movie. He has so much fun with all these elements, but he manages to tell like a really serious story also with like great action. And the way this movie is edited also is really, really impressive because not only does it bounce between two timelines, it manages to bounce among all these different characters and really puts multiple characters into the spotlight. And I think the acting is great. I think superhero movies in general are kind of underrated for their acting. And here in X-Men Days of Future Past, you get the best of both worlds because you get the original cast with Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, who are great, and then you have the equally as great new cast, James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, and ultimately this is a story about hope, which is kind of cheesy, but when you really think about it, it's a message that's so potent and delivered like really, really well by Bryan Singer. At number 12 is a movie that I watched in theaters and I didn't necessarily enjoy it that much because I think I was kind of in a bad mood and not really ready to watch it. But the more I thought about it and, I watched it again and I realized that How to Train Your Dragon 2 is a pretty great movie. I mean, directed by Dean DeBlois, we've reached that point in animation where pretty much every movie that comes out, animated movie, is just really, really gorgeous. I mean, the visuals in How to Train Your Dragon 2 are pretty much photorealistic, especially the lighting and the particle effects like smoke and water and all of that. It's just mind-blowing. And one big trademark also of the How to Train Your Dragon franchise is the music from John Powell, which is just amazing. It has the makings of like a really classic movie score. And what really struck me about How to Train Your Dragon 2 is that it's probably the most mature animated family film we've gotten in a lot of years, because I think the way it tackles its themes of family and responsibility, it just really never talks down to the audience. It's so, mature in the way it handles emotions. Now for number 11, I'm scared about pretty much every movie that comes out. I'm always afraid it's gonna suck. And I think the movie I was most afraid for last year was this one, and I'm so happy I was proven wrong, because Guardians of the Galaxy was a fun time, like the entire time. It really kind of brought you back to that original feeling, original Star Wars feeling, because it has such great kind of visual innovation with the fantastic CGI, the use of makeup, and it has, of course, a retro soundtrack that everybody loves. But really, this is kind of James Gunn's baby, like this movie is successful because of him, like the way he's able to get performances out of every single actor, no matter what they're saying, the way he's able to blend comedy with action, with sci-fi and all of that. And I'm really just kind of a sucker for like the message this movie has about, honor among criminals, you having to band together with other like low lives to be able to become better yourself. At number 10 is a movie I think a lot of my friends will disagree with me for it being on this list in the first place, and call me hipster or whatever, but this movie really haunted me from the very first time I saw it, and that is Under the Skin. First of all, just skipping over all the experimentalism of this movie, I think Under the Skin has some of the best visuals from last year because of the way it just kind of superimposes images on top of each other and really just kind of gets so much out of like the simplest things. The score is extremely creepy. It's one of the most memorable scores from last year, and this really is also like Jonathan Glazer's baby. Like this is all him. Like the tone and the atmosphere he achieves from beginning to end in this movie is unlike anything I'd ever seen. And it really is just this meditation on human perceptions of beauty and what that really means, and that's really helped along through Scarlett Johansson's performance. Now, number 9 is a movie that I don't think any of my friends have seen, and I don't know why, because as far as like big summer blockbusters go, I think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was by far the best one. First of all, this has, in my opinion at least, the best visual effects we've ever gotten, like in the history of cinema. The CGI is absolutely seamless. You think you're watching apes on screen. You don't see the actors anymore. But not just the CGI, like the production design of the hideouts that the apes have and the humans have. The cinematography is just extremely crisp and beautiful. The acting, of course, from Andy Serkis is no one can do what he does. He's one of the best actors working today. And Matt Reeves' direction, like he's really able to kind of make us buy the fact that these apes have their own little culture. Like the first 10 minutes of this movie is all just apes, signing to each other and them going about their lives, and it's just so interesting. And for me, what makes Dawn of the Planet of the Apes really kind of unique among all these different blockbusters is that while a lot of movies talk about war and whatnot, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes really talks about peace and how fragile peace is, and how even if you have peace, like a lot of it doesn't mean that the problem is gone. It's still there. And number 8 is a movie that I affectionately call Jake Gyllenhaal's Oscar reel, and I still will stand by that name even if he was not nominated for an Oscar for whatever incomprehensible reason. That is Nightcrawler, directed by Dan Gilroy. And again, this really is just Jake Gyllenhaal front and center. Like he completely transforms in this movie. Just the way he does not blink, the way he talks, the way he moves, the way he's lost weight. It's just such an amazing like character creation from this guy. And what I love so much about Nightcrawler also is how uncompromising it is in its writing and its direction. It really just treats the media and all these criminal acts as just acts of survival. And the way Dan Gilroy approaches this, like he makes this movie feel like a nature documentary at some points, because he's just so he just does not hold back with anything, and it's so surprising that this is coming from a first-time director. And he really did take a big risk in telling this kind of cynical story about how success by way of exploiting others, and I think that's a really very timely kind of message. Now, number 7 is a movie that I remember when its trailer came out, everyone flocked to the trailer and was saying like, I know exactly what's gonna happen, it's gonna play out like this, and they were all completely wrong because that was David Fincher's Gone Girl. Of course, you've got all your classic David Fincherisms, which means excellent direction, really beautiful cinematography, spot on editing also, and you have once again a great score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who I love because their score really kind of elevates the material. It really gives you a mood that you would not have felt with other music. And this, of course, is a great showcase for both Ben Affleck, who reminds us that he is capable of being a great actor, and Rosamund Pike, who is just completely transformative as well, who plays one of the most complex female characters I think we've gotten in a very, very long time. And what makes Gone Girl so great is that it works on multiple levels. It is a straight up like mystery film, but at the same time it talks about relationships, it talks about the media, it talks about gender roles and how they're kind of it subverts all those things and really delivers something very unforgettable. At number 6 is for me the first great movie of 2014. And it's a movie that I still do not understand why it was not nominated for Best Animated Feature, and that of course is the Lego Movie, directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, and I think this is just a triumph really on every single level when you talk about animation. I mean, doing CGI stuff, doing stop motion animation stuff, but what the Lego Movie does, it pretty much does both those things at the same time. It's CGI, stop motion, and that is super difficult because they're really kind of restricting themselves to being true to what the Legos are actually like, and it really, really works. It looks photorealistic once again. The voice acting is, of course, fantastic across the board. Chris Pratt, Will Arnett is the best Batman ever, Morgan Freeman, everyone really in the cast. And once again, Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, while they've only made like 4 movies, like they've already left their mark because the humor in this movie hits every single time. And at the same time, it works also on a deeper level of satire and just it plays on our expectations of what blockbusters are like. The message they craft in the end about creativity and about how we're all kind of capable of being special is just really, really resonated with me, and I left the theater with tears in my eyes and a really big smile on my face. At number 5, again, call me hipster, call me pretentious, because I don't know anybody else who saw this movie, but it did win the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival last year, but I really, really love Winter Sleep by Nuri Bilge Ceylan. This movie has like 2 settings. Like the first setting is quiet, just outdoor shots of this amazing Turkish landscape, and indoor shots also of like really elegant, really detailed production design. And then the second setting is just these really, really long conversations, like 25 to 30-minute long conversations about like really, really deep topics. And I think it's just written so well that when I finished watching the movie, I just felt like I had read a really, really great novel. And the acting is great also in the way that it's so restrained and it really manages to get these conversations across. Winter Sleep is really interesting to me because for me it's the first movie about hypocrisy that really kind of hit its mark so hard that I felt guilty myself. There are lots of movies that talk about, how we're all kind of sinners or whatever, but this is the one that really kind of made me think to myself that even if I, have recognition that I am a hypocrite, it doesn't mean I stop being a hypocrite. I'm just gonna keep going. Now, number 4 is the only horror movie on this list, and for me, it is the best horror movie we've gotten in probably a decade or something. I don't know. But for me, like Jennifer Kent's The Babadook was an experience. Like, I just love this movie to death. First of all, it's really, really low budget, but it manages to use its budget extremely well. It has amazing production design, like the way the house looks is just so dilapidated and scary. The way the actual Babadook creature looks is really simple but really, really terrifying. The use of makeup on Essie Davis's face to show her deterioration. The sound design in this movie is fantastic, probably my favorite use of sound in a movie last year. The acting, of course, from Essie Davis and the young Noah Wiseman is so believable. And the direction, of course, from, again, another first-timer, Jennifer Kent. Like, I'm just so thankful that she understands what real horror is, and The Babadook really is about, how the real horror is within us. It's when we deny the things that make us feel guilty and we take it out on other people. That's what real horror is, and it really, really scared me. Now, number 3 is a movie that when I watched it the first time, I could not concentrate on what people were saying because I was so distracted with how beautiful it looked, and I was trying to get every single visual detail into my mind. And of course, that's the Grand Budapest Hotel, directed by Wes Anderson. This is an absolute miracle of visuals, of audiovisual presentation. You know, you have a really, really kind of quirky score from Alexandre Desplat, and you have like some of the most elaborate and lavish production design ever. Like, you know, Wes Anderson really kind of constructed a hotel. The costumes are great, the makeup is great, the cinematography, the way it changes aspect ratio and stuff. And you know, this movie is not just about visuals either. Like, the acting is great from this huge ensemble cast, especially from Ralph Fiennes as M. Gustav. And of course, Wes Anderson has his trademark direction and editing in there. It's very, very quirky. Like, it's always, you know, perfectly framed, and it's just so much fun to watch. But when I watched this movie a second time, I realized just how sad it really was. You know, I realized that this isn't just like some sort of quirky story. For me, it's really kind of talks about how glory inevitably decays after a while. You know, as great as M. Gustav's life was, like, you know, as the Grand Budapest Hotel lived its life, like, it just kind of started shutting down and dilapidating, and it's really, really kind of sad. Now, number two is a movie that I remember watching in the theater, and as soon as it ended, me and a couple of other like random strangers in the audience were just like, yes, that was so good. And the ending of Whiplash is still probably my favorite ending of 2014. This is only Damien Chazelle's second directed movie, and it's already like one of the best of the year. First of all, like, this movie looks fantastic, of course. The editing is just pristine. It really follows the beat of the jazz music being played, and the music itself is fantastic. Like, the way the sound is recorded, and just, you know, it really kind of gives you a new perspective on this music, because you start hearing every single instrument, every single hit, every single note. And of course, this is a great star-making vehicle for Miles Teller, who gives this very, very intense physical performance, but it's also very memorable for J.K. Simmons' performance, who is just absolutely out of his mind, and he's so insane, and he's so fun to watch. And Whiplash has this really kind of dark message at the end also, which really kind of sets it apart from those other, you know, musical movies or those inspirational teacher-student movies. This is really about the price of success. Like, how far are you willing to go to become the greatest, and, you know, is being the greatest really worth it after all the stuff you've, you know, kind of thrown away in the process. And at number one is, well, it should come to no surprise for anyone who knows me in person, but, you know, call me a bandwagoner, call me, I don't know, like, I just can't exaggerate or lie about how I feel about Boyhood, directed by Richard Linklater. For me, Boyhood really is one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life, because, you know, it's hard to describe why I love the movie so much. For me, it's not really the kind of movie you can see why it's so great when you just watch individual scenes. It's really about the cumulative effect of watching this movie. You only realize, like, for me at least, how life-changing it is when you reach the end. And, you know, this movie is notable for how it was made, but it's so much more than that, I think. Like, the way it just depicts the passage of time through really, really smooth editing, through the progression of music, through the improvement of visuals and cinematography. But even if through all these changes, like, I think the acting in this movie is just phenomenal all across the board. You have Ethan Hawke and Patricia Arquette, you know, just delivering every single year. And the young Eller Coltrane, I think, really, really did a great job. You know, a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't like him. Yeah, I don't like how he's acting later in the movie because he's all dark and moody. Were you never a teenager? That's how all teenagers were, and I really give him kudos for capturing, like, a side of being a teenager that a lot of movies are afraid to go near because they think it's not interesting, but it is very interesting because I was able to connect so much. And really, this is all thanks to Richard Linklater's direction and his writing, which really just focuses on how the small moments define who we are. You know, like, it's not the big milestones, it's the moments that surround those milestones. And I know that doesn't sound as exciting as everything else on this list, but for me, it's the one movie that when I stepped out of the theater, I just couldn't stop thinking about it, and, like, every single thing around me just felt like it had new meaning. I don't know, like, maybe I'm being melodramatic about it, but I will never lie that Boyhood was my favorite movie of 2014. But again, like I said, this is not a case of Boyhood being better than everything else. For me, it's really, you know, like, how can you compare Boyhood to Whiplash? They're completely different movies. They're both amazing in their own ways. So, you know, like, I get that if you disagree with my choices here, but, you know, I'm curious to hear what you thought your favorite movies of 2014 were, whether you agree with me or not. Just leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.